The Aeglin Elves. Prologue. The first Unravelling. It is said among the lore masters of the Unima, those who spend their long, quiet lives poring over brittle scrolls in the deep archives, that in the deepest antiquity there was only the void. It was not a place of emptiness, but a chaos of unformed and unmeaning thought, a cacophony of possibility without pattern. From this, the Great Weaver came. She did not create the world, she wove it. With hands that moved like starlight and a mind of pure, singular intention, she spun the first threads of existence. She drew from the chaos and gave it order. She wove the light of distant suns, the immutable strength of the granite mountains, the deep, cold song of the lightless sea, and the first, silent breath of the ancient forests. The very air of the world was her design, and thus was wrought the world of Solenoir, and within it, the great, stable continent of Eldegarth. As her final work, when all the lands and seas were set in their perfect pattern, she took the purest excess thread, a fibre that held the concentrated essence of all 5 aspects of her creation, and fashioned from it the foundation of the world. It was a single, perfect garment, a form of flawless grace and balance, known in the ancient texts as the Athelias, the bound thread. This artifact she set at the very nexus of the land, in the sacred natural void where the threads of creation had first converged. This place, deep beneath the earth, was perfect and silent. In time it would be walled and revered, becoming the heart of the great city of Aeglin and the inner sanctum of the Unima. And from the final vibrant fibres left over from that last act, 5 pure essences manifested, shedding from the main garment like light from a prism. These were the Aethean strands: heart, will, mind, soul, and body. They settled across Eldegarth, sinking into the weave of the world to govern the balance of all life. When the final thread was laid and the hum of creation settled, the elves awoke. They were not woven themselves, but born of the echo of the weaver's work, their spirits coalescing in the deep forests and silent mountains. They awoke to a perfect, quiet world, their senses sharp and their hearts full of a song they did not yet understand. Their dawning age was a great pilgrimage. Drawn by an instinct they could not name, they travelled from the far corners of Eldegarth, their feet finding the first paths through the untrodden woods, their voices the first to name the trees and the stones. They were drawn, all of them, toward the source of the harmony, the deep, steady rhythm of the world's heart. They came upon the sacred void and found the Athelias, pulsing with a steady, quiet light. Their first queen, Alariel, a figure now known only through fragments of song, decreed that their people's sacred duty was not to use the foundation, but to protect it. It was she who began the building of the Unima, a massive protective shell of white stone built around the sacred void, a fortress of reverence. But not all elves saw harmony in the weave. There was one among Alariel's council, Vexara, a scholar of the outer fringes, who studied not the pattern but the gaps between the threads. She looked into the remnants of the void that existed before the weaver, and she saw not chaos, but a terrible, beautiful, and unbound potential. She came to believe that the great weaver's order was not a gift, but a cage. The Athelias, to her, was a lock, and the destiny of the elves was to be found only in severing the threads that bound them to the fates. She gathered followers, the first unbound, and taught them the anti-weaving rituals. Her instruments were not of the soft living weave, but of hard black leather, stitched with wire, and cold, unyielding metal. Her philosophy was one of singular dominant will. Thus began the first war of the weave. Vexara and her unbound host marched on the Unima, seeking to unmake the foundation. She enacted the unimaginable, the first unravelling, she brought her dark, corrosive will to bear upon the Athelius, forcing the perfect threads to violently reverse their weave. The catastrophe was immediate. The land convulsed. The very borders of reality frayed as the song of creation was forced to sing itself backward. Queen Alariel and her first queensmaids, the ancient counterparts to the 5 Ethian strands, met Vexara in a terrible battle. They halted the reversal, but they could not erase the trauma. The fabric of Solenois was scarred. The Unravelling created a blighted, chaotic land to the south, a place where the laws of nature were thin and the air was poison. This land was henceforth known as Vorthas. And the Athelius itself, though saved, bore a subtle internal wound, a 7% structural deficit that, for all the mending arts of the elves, could never be fully healed. Now, after a long and weary peace, the scars of Vorthas stir. A tremor runs through the foundations of the Unima, felt only by those with the deepest sight. The current queen, Seraphina, knows the pattern of doom repeats. She, alone among the living, carries the secret of the Weaver's grace, that same rare, terrifying vision of the true Solea that marks the line of succession. Knowing the enemy's ambition has returned, she enacts the final desperate gambit, the summons of the Ethian strands. 5 souls, scattered across Eldergarth and unprepared for their destiny, must now bear the weight of a world on the brink of a second and final unmaking. Chapter 1. The Summons.